Hey, real quick, stuff outside of Star Labs. One new startup called Accelerator Understanding. They just unveiled a 5 trillion parameter neural model, right? Different from the whole transformer architecture that everyone has been building on for like the past 10 years. And the whole idea is that they're trying to solve physics similar to Star Labs. These are the people, one of the co-founders was actually leading NVIDIA's chip design team. So really great mind there. Another one of them was actually at MIT doing some similar stuff over at that branch. I think it's really awesome to see what they're doing. I think it's also really worrisome because like, oh, now it's not just like doing robotics and trying to get a world model through robotics, but it's like, hey, we actually just want to solve physics, and that's the pure undiluted goal. I think that shows promise in that sense. Also, just like a different approach in general is like really exciting to see. And to be honest, I was very worried when I first saw it, but I do think after looking at what they've unveiled so far, I won't say I'm less worried, but I do think I have a better understanding of what I'm looking at versus just like, oh, they solve physics. Right, like from what I've seen, it's more so like they have a couple of simulations they're able to do with a new because they use a neural operator model. So they have a couple of simulations they're able to do, and it's like working really well. And the whole idea is not just for robotics, but more so for generative design. So take stuff like chip design, where a lot of groups are trying to say, okay, maybe we can use like agents to help us design chips faster. But they're saying instead of modeling the world through text, why not just use the actual world, the physics, and just optimize for that? Because if you understand physics, you can optimize for certain goals, and you can design the ideal chip. Um, which is really interesting because that was like the first thing. Like when I came into world models, I think that was like one of the first things I was interested in. It's like it actually inspired the work I did, and I want to say, man, it was the whole Lego work I was doing, trying to figure out if you could figure out a manifold of designs just from a couple constraints. But TLDR, very cool work they're doing. But it doesn't seem like they have the full thing down. They also haven't done any benchmarks. They also haven't really unveiled any. Like they've more so said we can do all these things. I think a lot of people on Twitter are not pushing back on that because nothing necessarily has been unveiled. But I also do think if when you look at the backgrounds of the people here, one being a director, one being a former director of the NVIDIA chip design team, another working at MIT, I don't think they're the type of people to just lie and say, "Hey guys, we just want attention." Um, also you have to take into account like these guys are actually meant to lead Jeff Bezos's startup, the Prometheus one, who's also working in the whole physical AI space. So I trust that they definitely have something promising. What I do think is even more interesting is that the learn to simulate paper that the startup team has been looking at in terms of inspiration and comparison. That paper eventually became GraphCast, which is Google's weather model, which basically was like the leading model in terms of simulating weather for like further into the future for a couple of days or weeks or months. Um, there at that time when that paper came out, there was also other approaches. Like they were using a message passing network system, which is basically a graph system, and then you had other people like Nvidia who were using neural operators, which I think is also ironic because the person coming from Nvidia is now having a startup that does neural operators, and the work we're inspired by, not inspired by, but the work we're actually looking at to compete with and beat is more graph based. I think it's really interesting to see um why is that schism there, and to see maybe that schism shows it gives some insight into what the future of these world model architectures may be. Maybe it does make sense for the graph to be the base architecture. Maybe it makes more sense to use neural operators, and maybe there's something where you can like gain something from like maybe I can gain something from neural operators instead of just jumping ship. 'Cause I really have no desire to jump ship. I think graphs are really the best approach to model the world, even though I think neural operators make a lot of sense. So we'll see how that goes. Also, I do think it's very interesting because, like I said earlier, they've come out with a pure undiluted goal, which is redundant to say, of just solving physics. I think that's interesting to me because a lot of these startups I've seen in the world model space, like AMI with Yan Kun or World Labs with Faith Lee, have seemed to more so seem to be more focused on robotics as the first major application. Like the whole when people say physical AI, it's often just a fancier way of saying robotics. And I think it's interesting to me because one, I'm interested if they actually just pivot and say, hey guys, actually we're going to do robotics and we're going to use this new operator system to figure out a way to better control robotics. Or and two, it's interesting because there's like three, like it's kind of like this anime thing where you see like three different like panels all on one screen. It's like there's different ways to try and build a world model to give a system a model of the world. like people are doing it through robotics. Like if you can control a robot system, then it builds its own internal world model. People are saying, okay, maybe if we can figure out generative design and figure out how to understand physics through like some medium, like a chip design, like maybe you can figure out how to build a model of the world, or if you can just figure like Star Labs, if you can figure out a way to model the world and its physics, they can figure out a way to build a world model. And I think what's interesting is that if you're able to do either of those things really, really well with the right architecture, then it should be relatively easy to generalize to other things. Like I believe with Star Labs, if we're able to do the things we want to do, then robotic control and manipulation isn't as hard of a task, right? And I believe same thing with the chip design people, or same thing with the robotics people. That's why, like, even though I don't think robots is the first application I think Star Labs should go into, I do think that if they were able to go through the right architecture and not take these shortcuts that they may likely to be take just because of what seems the most profitable, um, then they'll be able to build a proper world model system, and that becomes the thing where it's like, okay, it's, they figure out how to do it, right? So maybe this approach isn't the best. Overall, I do think it's exciting. I think I'm just really happy to see another approach. Right? There's been a lot of talk about how a lot of the architectures that we're seeing in the AI space are seeming to converge on one, and maybe the solutions we're looking for instead of just scaling are actually in different architectures, right? And I think that's what makes the whole graph approach promising to me, and that's what makes me excited about this whole neural operator approach. But um, I'll be looking at them. I'll be watching them and then be gaining insights to see if anything is relevant to Star Labs, and also just accelerating the work at Star Labs. These guys also remind me that this space is very competitive, and everyone is doing something. It doesn't just because someone is quiet doesn't mean stuff isn't going to be on behind the scenes. Like right now, I imagine these guys have been working on this for like the past 2 years or 3 years or so, right? So like maybe I'd even signal them, I didn't even flag them, but now it's like, oh, they have this thing already. And it's like really, really good. And we have to keep that in mind as I continue to work on this project, and also find the ways to make sure I can be able to sense those type of things. Um, but yeah, besides that, I have nothing else to say. So have a great day.